Today, we're going to start the conversation with Chandrashekar Kupperi, founder of 1Mby1M Corporate Services and a general partner at Peaceful Progress Fund, an angel fund, which is the topic of our discussion today. Chandrashekar, welcome. Do you like to go by Chandra or Chandrashekar?
Just call me Shekhar. Thank you for having me here, first of all, Shramanna. It's absolute privilege, happiness, being here.
My pleasure to have you. So it's an opportunity for us to get to know each other as well as our audience to know you. So let's start there, actually. Tell us a bit about your background as well as about what you're doing with Peaceful Progress Fund.
So I'm an old guy. My professional journey began as early as 1997. So I'm sure some of the entrepreneurs out here would be much, much younger to me. So I have almost 2.5 decades of experience. My basic qualification is in finance and accounting. I'm a chartered accountant from India with multiple other professional qualifications, both in finance and management areas. I started my career with ExxonMobil, and then I moved to KPMG. And my last stint as an employee was with a UK-based multinational. And this company, had consumer brands. They were mainly in the skincare and hair care. And it operated more like a private equity. We used to buy brands from Unilever, Procter & Gamble. That's what we did. And Shramanna, this is what happened to me. I had a phenomenal experience and journey with them because I was able to meet some amazing iBankers, private equity funds, venture capitalists, hedge funds. But I think more importantly, even law firms, because that's where I truly understood how do you structure a transaction. But if I have to say, very boldly, also to say how to say no to a transaction. So I think that was a phenomenal journey for me. Did 11 acquisitions and 4 divestments, and we sold the business to another multinational. And then as I was doing that, somewhere this entrepreneurial bug bit me, and that's how 1Mby1M was born. So 1Mby1M effectively started in June 2013. 1Mby1M is basically an advisory firm. Our focus is in 2 verticals. One is M&A, and the other is fundraise. We work actively with the MSMEs in India, as well as the startup ecosystem. We help mainly on the equity side and on a need base. Whenever we think hybrid is required, we work even on the debt. 1Mby1M is sector agnostic, but my sector focus is generally consumer, manufacturing, and you can't leave technology. So technology is the other area where I work. And quickly on Peaceful Progress Fund, that's a fund which we got the SEBI approval in February this year. It's an angel fund, a 50 crore size, and it can go up to 70 crore, that is circa $10 million fund, focusing on technology, consumer, and electric vehicles.
All right. So let's double click down on Peaceful Progress Fund and tell us a bit more about what pertains to our audience, which is tech-related stuff. So technology-enabled services, e-commerce. There's a lot of consumer brand building going on right now in an internet-first mode. So I presume that if you're doing consumer, that's part of your purview.
Exactly.
So tell us more about what your investment thesis is relative to where we play.
Sure. So first of all, when we say technology, Shramanna, we are keeping it simple. We are keeping it to plain vanilla that we understand. So it is the world of fintech, health tech, ed tech, food tech, consumer tech, retail tech, manufacturing tech. And of course, you spoke about the consumer, so therefore also D2C, direct to consumer, and definitely, e-commerce, marketplace, sort of models. So the idea of, investing in technology is to ensure that the technology is an enabler rather than a pure play. So it could be the likes of AI, ML, deep learning, or even sometimes, augmented reality, virtual reality, which actually enables the business to perform better. That's where our focus is. And the fund does co-investment. So, we don't want to take the credit saying that we are the first institutional investors. We want to ensure that we co-invest with either other angel platforms or venture capital firms. So to the entrepreneurs out here, if you have already raised money from an angel platform, feel free to approach us because we will definitely want to review your business and ensure that we are also able to give you a quality feedback given the experience that some of the sponsors and LPs carry out there.
What size checks do you write?
So typically it is between $150,000 to $400,000, but can be slightly higher too. So it depends on the startup and the requirement, but that's a sweet spot.
So let's do a few examples of companies that you've invested in within the tech-enabled sphere.
Sure. So let me begin with the first one. It's an edtech company, but nothing to do with academics. So this is a startup which basically ensures that they're able to help students or professionals connect with the right mentors. And all happens via an artificial intelligence and bot. And what this business does is it ensures, that not just the connection happens, but also any follow-on support is also given by the startup, even in terms of a placement or even some sort of a support to even understand the segment better. I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody want to get into, deep learning, and they want to understand what is NLP. The mentor would not only guide them in terms of getting the basic understanding, but also ensure that if they want to get and be part of a startup or a business, they will connect, the student or the professional. And this business has been doing quite well. They've got almost 7,500 mentors onboarded. The sort of, user base is more than 300,000, and they're doing extremely well. The second
and what is the business model?
The business model is basically B2C and B2B2C. So they connect with the customers directly and then monetize, but also they have tie-up, with other businesses from where they're able to get the consumers. So it's a SaaS-based model.
SaaS-based model.
Yes.
I see. And okay, do you have one in fintech, an example in fintech?
We have just invested in a fintech business, but this is very, very interesting, Shramanna. They started as a HR tech payroll business because they onboarded almost 10,000 corporates, and therefore they have 400,000 employees or staff, as part of their system. And what they've just pivoted now is they have bought a neobank, and because they bought the neobank, they are doing two things. One is they are able to give the earned wage access, which is a salary credit which happens in between the month. And slowly they're going to also ensure that they're able to lend, based on the credentials of the employee. And the reason why they want to do that is because they have the database within the system. So it becomes so easy for them, to do the underwriting and then offer the support. So
there are a couple of companies that are doing quite well in that sphere, Earnin and PayActive in the US.
Absolutely well said, Shraman. Absolutely well said. In fact, the earned wage access is something which we initially thought, would be difficult, to monetize. But trust me, the sort of traction that we are seeing is unbelievable. And it's not also too pricey on the employee. So it becomes, even more handy.
Yeah. Okay. And now in these two examples that you gave us, how did you meet these entrepreneurs? Did another investor who was leading the round bring you into the deal?
So because we are a co-investment fund, obviously, the deal would come from the platform or, the fund. But then, that doesn't, mean that we will invest because they're introducing. So obviously, we have conversations with the founders. And when I say conversation, what essentially we do is either a couple of, the sponsors and the members of IC, we typically, have a conversation. It's a very general chat to understand, what is the sort of motivation for the founder to get on with that business. What is the motivation in terms of ensuring that the founder can build, the team, the scalability. But I think what importantly we are trying to understand is, do they also map the competition? Because one of the aspects that we are very clued on is, if the startup entrepreneurs, they respect the competition, that gives us much more confidence, because that means that they're going to come up with some economic moat, against the competition, or they're going to come up with some differentiation that is going to help them have a little bit of an unfair advantage. So we always ensure that we speak to the founders, try to understand what is their ability to scale up, but more importantly, do they really understand the problem and the solution that they have come up with, how well they can execute. Because in many cases we have seen that every idea is great, every problem that they come up with is outstanding. Probably the solution is also very interesting to hear. But then where we see the difficulty is the execution. And therefore, the traction is very important for us. And sometimes you can't explain the traction always in a quantitative manner. And therefore, sometimes the qualitative aspect of how, they're sort of even gelling with the customers or the suppliers or the ecosystem is very important.
Shekhar, what is your strategy vis-a-vis some of the dynamics of the Indian ecosystem right now? There are larger funds like Tiger and SoftBank who've been flushing startups with capital and creating lots of barrier, competitive advantage with capital. Are you going to act as a feeder into these kinds of situations? Do you have a different philosophy? How do you parse this particular dynamic?
Very interesting question, Shramanna. The fund's thesis is very simple. We invest in seed to pre-series A. And if you see the likes of Tiger Global or Sequoia or SoftBank, they obviously are at a much higher rounds, typically Series B, Series C onwards. And therefore, what happens is we are able to attract a lot of startups at an early stage. And we are also able to sometimes offer the support from the LPs to mentor them or even guide them or even connect, given the network effect that we carry. But I think more importantly, because we are a fund which is co-investing, we also have the ability to do a follow-on round, which may help the entrepreneurs, to ensure that the traction is better so that they can go for a much bigger
funding. That's not
funding.
my question. You didn't understand my question. My question is, do you want to act as feeders into these humongous rounds? Because small funds like yours get diluted heavily, as the game that the Tigers and the SoftBanks are playing is they're putting in huge amounts of money in the later rounds, and some of the smaller funds that we have brought in here have said that it's not so easy for them to play that game, right? You can't really do pro rata at those levels. So some of them are seeking exit when let's say a very large Series B or Series C comes in, the small funds are taking an exit. So that's my question is, how are you processing this dynamic of very large funding rounds downstream?
The answer is very simple, Shramana. We'll look for an exit because obviously the larger funds would not want smaller funds to be there, because of the rights and, everything. So our idea is to, seek an exit at that time. So that's the philosophy, that we carry. That's the idea of being at an early stage also. Because clearly, it would be very difficult, to still continue, as a fund and not have certain rights because you will lose out on the liquidation preference too at that point.
Exactly. You lose on all the liquidation preferences. That's exactly my question.
The answer is very simple. The answer is very simple. We would want to seek an exit, and that's what, we would want to do. And that's what typically happens. I'll give you an example. Is that
what's happening across the board in the Indian small funds?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And that is the reason why, a lot of early stage funds, they're rising. You'll be surprised India has got 900 funds and the early stage funds, are also increasing because they feel that, they will be able to get an exit at either a Series B or a Series C sort of rounds. Sometimes happens even in a Series A.
Yeah. And then it makes sense. It's kind of you split the business building into two phases. You take the early stage with the smaller funds, and then everybody exits into as the company gains traction, and this game of very large funding rounds starts to kick in gear. Because there are challenges to that very large funding round game, right? That doesn't always work.
Exactly. So you interrupted me, but let me finish that because it's very relevant for the entrepreneurs out there. What happens in an early stage phenomena is that, as you're investing and you have other co-investors too, you have an ability also to put a follow-on round, which is much more easier for the entrepreneurs because they have already had a, sort of interaction with, or rather, some sort of a network has already happened with the existing investors. And that helps them even to improve the traction before they approach the larger funds. Because when they have to go for the larger fund, obviously the thinking is they have to raise a bigger amount. They can't raise a smaller amount because the
you need traction to justify that. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's what, that's the game that we play.
But, there's only so much you can do with a $10 million funds that's, there's limitations to how many deals you can do and how much follow-on you can do.
So we are co-investment.
Yeah. Okay, cool. What other trends are you seeing in the Indian startup ecosystem right now that are worth discussing?
So I'll focus on consumer because that is the other focus area of this fund. And we are seeing that there's a lot of product personalization startups that are coming. So there are startups, which ensure that, there are DNA testing kits, which help, to sort of find out what is the requirement of the consumers. And that personalization is becoming quite big. The second that we are looking at is sustainability, because there are a lot of startups, which are getting into the sustainable sort of businesses. What I mean by that is sometimes, it is also to do with natural, organic, things, which are plant-based, and all that, is becoming recycled, sort of products. All that is becoming quite an interesting business. The other, startups that we're looking at in the consumer space is to do with supplements, which are, helping in terms of even augmenting some of the requirements, of consumers on the skin care or hair care. So this is an interesting area, that is happening even from the consumer world. And finally, we're also trying to look at certain startups which are helping with the virtual try-on technologies. So this is like the world of, the businesses which can help you to have an e-commerce platform, but also give you a feel that can you do a virtual try of the product, so that gives them the feel of whether it fits properly or whether that's a product that they should choose.
And in the B2C world, of course, the first wave of e-commerce startups we saw were targeting the affluent population, and then after Reliance Jio came into being, we started seeing the lower end of the Indian consumer becoming more accessible because they had a device, they were, you could advertise to them, et cetera, et cetera. Where does that stand from where you sit? How do you analyze that whole dynamic?
It's a very important question, Shramana, because I think many, because I come from a consumer background, I work with a lot of consumer, businesses. I can tell you there's something called the bottom of the pyramid, which is where you actually see there is significant potential. And thanks to what Jio is doing, because the accessibility, for, people to have a smartphone, and therefore the ability, to sort of look at, various products and at the prices, that they find, affordable to them, is definitely happening. So I think what has led, to growth in terms of startups is they're looking for space in the tier 3, tier 4, sort of cities. Earlier, the focus was on tier 1, tier 2. So there are startups which focus on tier 3, tier 4, where they see that the consumer traction is even more significant. Sometimes even the loyalty, even that, they see there. So the trends that we see is, one is the stickiness. Second, is in terms of, the ability to ensure that, they are able to use a smartphone and buy the product. But I think more importantly, because it's like a little more close community, they are able to refer the products much more easily to others, and that increases the buying propensity.
What are you seeing? What are some examples of really good companies that are focused on that segment?
So there is a company, which is into Ayurvedic chocolates. So this is an interesting, and they chose, to sort of launch, in tier 3, tier 4, rather than a tier 1, tier 2, because you have the competition from the biggies. And what has happened is that because it's Ayurvedic, number one, the health benefit is easy to convey, but more importantly, even, the way, it is done in a format, that is easy for the tier 3, tier 4 customers to resonate with. What this has done is, one is, it has led to the increase in the wallet size, the ability, to offer some of the products, that the consumer are looking for, and therefore that research, that insight, happens much more easily. But the third thing which has happened is, we have realized that there are certain pockets, where people are having the ability to spend. Because typically we think, that the spending potential is not significant in some of this tier 3, tier 4, but it's actually quite the opposite. And therefore, sometimes, you can even have product ranges where certain premium, sort of launches could also happen there to ensure that, you're able to meet the customer taste, the customer preference.
So, and what category though? I mean, in a wallet that is tighter, you have to hit the priority segments, right? So I imagine in India being India, EdTech must be on top of that list, yeah?
Yeah, because it's the pressure from the parents too. India is India. So as you know, so there's a lot of focus that is given on EdTech because, the actual, consumer, okay, and the actual customer, they are different people. For example, the customer is a parent, the consumer is the child. So what happens is the customer has the willingness to pay, and therefore, if the EdTech, the startup is able to entice the consumer, the student, then it becomes a big game. So I think we should never get carried away by the fact that EdTech is doing so well. I can tell you there are almost 4,000 EdTech startups. 1,500 have already shut the shop. Okay, the others are, literally, struggling, to sort of make their ends meet. Of course, they're active. So it's only the unicorns, that we get to hear, and then we get carried away. The likes of Byju's and Vedantu, Upgrad. This is what happens. There are some cute, edtech startups which do not touch the academics. That's why I gave the example of this particular startup where we have invested. They're trying to do, things other than the academics, the K-12, as we typically say. So you're right to say that edtech has got significant, sort of eyeballs, but it depends in terms of what sort of segments that they're playing into, as well as the customer base, because the academics is something which has got extremely crowded. And if it is a Me Too, they can't survive there.
Is there any edtech company that is doing well in the tier 3, tier 4?
There are, at least, couple of them, which I can think of. And when I say they're doing well, there are two things that we need to understand. One is their ability to increase their user base. And the second is, are they also able to ensure that the customer, life cycle is increased? Because what happens is sometimes, you offer a course, and with that, your consumer, stops sort of, attending, to that particular, whatever is that package. But then if you're able to give an add-on package, that's where, this becomes even more interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think the question really is monetization, right?
Exactly.
Getting a whole lot of free users is not a business. You don't build a business by giving a lot of stuff for free.
Exactly. So I think what is important is lowering your CAC, but also ensuring, that, you have a customer lifetime value, which is, which is at least, 3-4 times, of the CAC, so that you believe, that there is going to be a profitability at some point of time. Most of them, they bleed. They don't make money in the early, sort of years. But definitely because the user base is increasing, if somebody can track how well the user base is increasing, how active they are, what is the churn, but more importantly, also ensure, that the average revenue per user can go up, then I think this becomes significantly a big play.
Yeah.
Byju's, which is
It'll be
considered
interesting.
one of the top
There will be some companies that will come out of that, bottom of the pyramid in India, that by catering to that bottom of the pyramid wallet in India. I don't think we know yet which ones are going to emerge as the big successes for that segment, but I think that's a very important segment, which, in the beginning, when the India story started to get traction, everybody was talking about billion consumers, billion 3 consumers. No, the whole story was focused on the tip of the pyramid. It's like skimming from the top, basically. Only after Geo, that secondary market has opened up, but I don't know that we have quite cracked that yet.
You're absolutely right. We have not yet cracked, and probably there are two reasons for that. One is, the ability of the startup also to survive and get the right level of funding. Because I think the world of venture capital, the world of, funding, has still not evolved to support, startups, which are saying that they can make a difference, in the tier 3, tier 4, because some, the confidence level is still not significant. Of course, it's happening, but not to the level that we want. There are funds.
Well, that's because the trajectory, the pace of growth generally is not there, right? The VCs are trying to go from 0 to 100 million in 5 to 7 years. The tier 3, tier 4 markets are not offering that kind of trajectory yet.
Exactly. So it takes time, and it takes time because of, two reasons. One is, again, to ensure that the penetration, is done in a way that there is a connect. You just can't do a digital marketing, some sort of a gimmick, to say that, no, you can onboard customers. And the second is you also need that level of people, who can, ensure that, no, the message is passed on, correctly. And probably you also need the vernacular sort of, languaging that gives them the confidence that the startup can support.
That's true. Yeah, it's the vernacular internet, not the English internet. That is correct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, Shekhar, very interesting conversation. I'm sure we could go on and on, but let's listen to some of the entrepreneur pitches. Are you staying?
Absolutely. Yes, I'm staying. I'm going to, put myself on mute and off my video, but I would love to, hear the entrepreneurs.
Okay. Terrific.
Thank you for having me, Shramana. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.